How about this? Chapter 2. How would you like this? A house in New York City, a county house overlooking the Hudson River at Hyde Park, New York, and a summer house in Campobello, New Brunswick by the sea. Now, just for a variety, you'll take plenty of trips. Paris this year, England the next. You'll be surrounded by servants, cooks, drivers, gardeners, a laundress, and your own private teachers. You'll have a pony and dogs and just about everything you want. In addition, you'll have loving parents who adore you and see that children come to play with you. When you finally go off to school at age 14, your parents will take you in their own railroad car. It has its own bedroom and living room. Sounds pretty terrific. Well, it wasn't bad. And that was what Franklin Delano Roosevelt's childhood was like. No, he wasn't a prince, he just lived like one. So did other children of wealthy American upper class in the late 19th century. That was a time when 11 million of the 12 million families in America had an average income of $380 a year. Only a few thousand families could be called rich, and compared when the really wealthy Vanderbilts or Astors, the Roosevelts, were no big deal. How do you think you would turn out if you had everything you wanted? Do you think you might be vain, arrogant, spoiled, and worthless? Well, that's how some of those rich kids turned out. Some poor kids probably turned out that way too, but not Franklin Roosevelt. Here's Franklin Roosevelt in 1898 with his Newfoundland mix. Here's the Vanderbilts, who had a huge king palace of a mansion in Hyde Park just down the road from Roosevelt's house. Maybe it was why Franklin Roosevelt never thought of himself as rich. Today, both houses are museums, and you can walk from one to another on a special hiking trail that menders alongside, affording the spectacular view of the Hudson River. His parents gave him good values. They expected him to behave like a gentleman, to be kind, considerate, and honest. They gave him a strong religious faith. He was an Episcopalian. That faith gave him courage when he needed it. He needed courage many times in his life. First, when he went away to Groton. Groton was a rich school, boys' school. Now there are girls there too, but the headmaster didn't believe in pampering. Every boy was expected to take a cold shower each morning. That wasn't really hard if you gritted your teeth and showered fast. It was much harder trying to be just one of the group when you had always been the center of attention. Franklin was handsome, charming, and friendly, but he never got along with people his age as well as he did with those older and younger. At Groton, he didn't get picked for awards and teams he really wanted, and that hurt. But he had been taught not to complain. It became part of his character, not complaining. He would be enthusiastic and act as if everything was fine, even if it wasn't. It made him pleasant to be around, but it also made some friends uneasy. They never knew how he really felt. Franklin went to Harvard, and his parents expected him to do, and to Columbia Law School. His mother intended him to live the comfortable life of a country squire as his father had before him. After all, with the family money he had no need to work hard. He didn't have to concern himself with others, but he did. When he was a student himself, he wrote to segregated Southern colleges, appealing them to do as Harvard did and accept black students. He may have been concerned with those who were less fortunate than himself because of an important influence in his life, a man he admired more than anyone else, a man who cared about the people and wanted to make the world better than he had found it. It was the President of the United States, his cousin, Theodore. When Frank was a child, he loved to visit Sagamore Hill, TR's Long Island home in Oyster Bay. There he could romp and run with energetic, fun-loving Teddy and his 5 children. Frank decided that someday he too would have a big family and play with his family as TR did. He also decided he would serve his country, and he set out to do it. First, he became New York State Senator. Then Woodrow Wilson made him Assistant Secretary of the Navy. If you remember, TR held that job. In 1920, he ran for president with James Cox against Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge, and he lost, but people began to talk about him as a politician to watch. He soon had a fine family, a business wife, a daughter, and 4 sons. He was an energetic father, full of good spirits, who loved to sail and hike. Yale's football coach watched him exercise and said, "Mr. Roosevelt is a beautifully built man with long muscles of an athlete." But what he wanted most of all was to be president. He told that to a classmate while he was still in college, and it looked as if he had a good chance to fulfill that ambition. Then tragedy struck. He went to bed one night not feeling well, and the next morning he couldn't move. He was 39 and he had a dreaded disease called poliomyelitis. Usually it struck children. Its common name it was infantile paralysis. It was especially hard on adult victims. It's also known as polio. Later, Jonas Salk and Albert Sabin developed a vaccine to prevent polio, but that was still 20 years in the future. Imagine you're an active man, father of 5 children with big ideas, then overnight you're crippled. At first, Roosevelt couldn't move at all. Slowly, with painful therapy and concentration, he regained the use of his upper body. He would never run again. When he walked, it was in heavy braces with agonizing steps. Would you have the courage to go on with your plans? Would you feel sorry for yourself? Would you take it easy and let people wait on you? At first, everyone was sure his career was finished. Franklin's mother expected him to live the life of a wealthy invalid, but Franklin was determined to live normally. He was a cheerful man and an optimist. Where others saw problems, he saw challenges. His parents had trained him not to complain, and even when he was in great pain, he didn't. As it turned out, he gained something from his terrible illness. It taught him patience and made him more determined. It made him know frustration and sorrow and anguish. He, the boy who had everything, learned to understand that those who had troubles. On top of that, he was married to a very unusual woman. She too was determined that she would not change his goals. He should not change his goals. Her name was Eleanor. Here's a picture. After contracting polio in 1921, Roosevelt worked tirelessly to regain his physical strength. He was never able to walk again unaided, but his energy and his optimism were so apparent when he attended the New York State Democratic Convention in 1926.